thank you for coming tonight. On behalf of all of the members of the Farmington Area Suicide Prevention Task Force, really this is all about the community and seeing the community members here. That's the important thing. It's about getting information into your hands.
Suicide Prevention Task Force, correct?
That is correct.
Now tell me, what inspired that organization and what do you do in that force?
Well, I am, as you pointed out, a co-chair along with fellow council members Nancy Bates and Dr. Randy Bruce. And approximately 2 years ago, we saw an uptick in the number of suicide attempts in our youth, and we found that very disconcerting. So we decided to study the problem, see if there was something that we could do on a proactive basis. Other communities react to events. We wanted to be proactive. And what we found out is that there are a number of people that need assistance, and we were a little concerned that maybe we didn't have enough resources. Well, ultimately, the issue is not a lack of resource, but a lack of being able to connect those who need help with those resources that already exist. So the task force was formed to raise the awareness of this community that suicide and the depression that leads to it are treatable issues. Most suicides are preventable. And if we do, in a proactive fashion, if we are able to get the word out there and get people's awareness raised, we can help prevent tragedies.
Many times, we as adults and youth are threatened by differences in people. What we don't understand, we have a tendency to fear. Our reactions can be extremely hurtful, and we will address how this escalates.
And our goal is to hold these vital community conversations about suicide, depression, and mental health that can educate the members of our community, lessen the stigma surrounding these subjects, and get important resources to those in the community who really need it. 2 years and change ago, I tried taking my own life. My mother and every specialist, nurse, and doctor that tended to me asked me what had driven me, a healthy, loved, upper middle class, straight A student, to attempt suicide, and I refused to talk to anybody about it.
Tonight's community conversation is sponsored by the Farmington Suicide Prevention Task Force, as you can see. I'm really proud to be a part of this group. Our task force came together in 2010 after a rash of suicides occurred in our middle schools over the period of about 2 weeks. Those attempts, which were unrelated, inspired our city council members to form a task force which would educate and inform our community about suicide and its risk factors. This is our third community event, as I mentioned, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to get this kind of dialogue going in my hometown.
So talk about what? Well, initially, the discussion is to talk about suicide. The reason we need to talk about it tends to be a taboo subject, as was cancer 35 years ago. There are a number of these issues, but now we all know what risk factors are for cancer. We know what risk factors are for heart disease and so forth. We also know that suicide has risk factors associated with it. But many people don't know what those are. They don't know what that picture is. And we can't get information into people's hands if we can't have that conversation. So we're going to break that taboo, and that's what we're talking about.
But I would like to welcome everybody and let everybody here know that Farmington Hills, as a city, is 100% behind this project. And we're very proud of Ken Massey and Nancy Bates and Randy Bruce for getting this going. This is a message that has to get out into the community. People have to start talking about it, have to become aware of the suicide problems, especially amongst our young people. And the turnout here tonight is obviously phenomenal. And so other people feel about it the same way we do.
And there will be days when any progress seems ambiguous because your loved one has been crying in another room for nonstop for hours, or has gone the entire day without saying a single word to you.
I have to say, and I excuse me if I get a little choked up when I say this, about a year and a half ago, my school faced a suicide. We had to deal with that where one of our young students took his own life, and that was very difficult for us in that community, but it really helped us frame the conversation, frame the types of questions that we need to be engaging, not just our young folks in, not just our teachers, but really the entire community around. So I'm proud that we're able to do these types of things, and I'm proud to be in a room where people are interested in topics like this as well. So
the question becomes, have you been touched? And I could ask this question and by a show of hands, how many people have known somebody or lost somebody, but I know that it touches every race, every economic status, touches every type of employment, every type of education, educational level. Sexes, religions, you name it, everyone is a potential suicide victim.
And our organization is very proud to be here in support of the Farmington area, Farmington Hills, Farmington area efforts to combat the problem of suicide. It's a very serious issue. And I'm pleased to see how many of the members of this community have turned out.
Yeah, and so the last word on the t-shirt is human, to emphasize the fact that at the end of the day, we're all human. It doesn't really matter what adjectives we use to describe ourselves. And the students also, the part of the Day of Silence is breaking the silence, and what are you going to do to break the silence? And so our GSA decided to break the silence by plastering posters that, like the two that are held up here, as well as others, all over the school, so that on Monday morning there would be no silence. In fact, their message would be very loud and clear.
The simplest, easiest, quickest, most foolproof way you can just finally get rid of this terrible damned problem is to stop seeing your loved one as the problem.
To look at why we should talk about this topic and the importance of creating that conversation, even if it's just a one-on-one dialogue, just how far that conversation can go in changing some of the life decisions of our youth or even some of your friends.
And the thing is, because so often with suicide, we talk about statistics. And I can give you a whole bunch of statistics that it's a third leading cause of suicide among youth and so on and so forth. But suicide prevention is not about statistics. It's about people.
It also was a really good thing because it presents opportunities to start having conversations. And so, instead of people kind of quietly having these conversations in the corners of the school, they became a little bit more, prominent. And so it gave us an opportunity to have, conversations about how people feel about this and why. And I think it started a really important dialogue at our school.
And I started to look at some of the signs and symptoms of warning signs of depression and potential suicide. And you see feelings of sad or loneliness, excessive frustration or irritability, changes in sleeping patterns, feeling of helplessness or hopelessness. And you start to see that there's some overlapping feelings and signs and symptoms with internet addiction.
We had 7 suicides last year in Farmington Hills. The year before we had 10. Last year we had 92 people attempt to take their life in Farmington Hills. We had 81 other people who threatened to take their life in Farmington Hills last year. Our police officers petitioned 230 people for mental health treatment last year, which was an 18% increase. People sometimes ask me, they say, Chief, what's the biggest challenge you have in Farmington Hills? And they usually expect me to say crime or some kind of crime. They're a little surprised sometimes when I come back and say that the biggest challenge we have is mental health issues.
I think we need to talk. I think we have something that we need to take on. And that was the issue of teens attempting to injure themselves.
And they really helped my son. And he learned to accept himself, which was important to him before coming out to us. Because when you're in a situation like that, you want to know more about the people you're trying to teach or at least, share news with.
To help someone after a suicide attempt, it takes unprecedented time and effort, and your loved one might initially be stubborn and uncooperative and even closed-minded. Mental health is not a checklist kind of problem. Are you suicidal, yes or no? But a sliding measurement scale, and your goal is to help your loved one, raise that scale and keep it up there.
The point of my message, and it's going to be brief, I'm not going to go to just a moment or two longer, but it's to create awareness and education that substance abuse plus depression can equal suicide. If we're educated about the issues, if we're willing to talk about it, and if we're observant to all the warning signs, we have a chance to save lives.
So what's the problem? Problem is we don't talk about it.
With increased levels of victimization come higher levels of depression and anxiety and decreased levels of self-esteem. So here's what to look for in youth who seems depressed, to screen for the possibility of suicidal ideation or intent. In my practice, in addition to what I do at the school. I also have a private practice, and I see a lot of the LGBT community, my community. And one of the things I see with the kids a lot is indirect verbal signs of depression. The child may talk about a friend who's suicidal. There may also be written or artistic expressions about death or suicide. You really need to look at what is the child listening to? What are they drawing? What are they writing about? Not that I'm encouraging you to look in their journals, but often there are signs there.
Because it's like cancer was 30 years ago, 35 years ago. You don't want to talk about cancer. You don't want to talk, oh, somebody has prostate cancer. Now we've got commercials for prostate cancer all the way up to erectile dysfunction. We can talk about all these things, but when it comes to talking about something that is killing us, suicide, we don't do it.
Community leaders must model acceptance and zero tolerance for bullying.
So I thought about that in preparation of tonight, and so when to call the police, it's really 5 words before it's too late. That's the time to call.
And for me, it's an inspiration to see that we can really make changes in people's lives.
I congratulate you for speaking, because that's extremely difficult to do, especially under these circumstances, so thank you, Ken. I also want to thank everybody here and commend you as well for being here as a community and showing up in such strong force, because this is an issue that is a difficult one to talk about, difficult one to listen about.
If the family can just get on board on the path of being accepting and at the very least tolerant, that goes a long way to preventing major mental health issues and suicide within your family and that youth, specifically that youth.
So one of the most difficult questions a parent can ask, but really needs the information for, is if the young person is still suicidal. When a kid or anyone is discharged from a psych hospitalization, they are just stable enough to get treatment. That's what happens in a psych hospital. They just stabilize. They don't provide the treatment. And so there's still a significant risk for up to 3 months following a hospitalization.
And by talking about this, we're helping reduce stigma and fear, and we're helping to promote acceptance and understanding. So thank you for helping us do that.
Because so many times we're hoping that the crisis has passed, and it may not have, and we just need to really keep communicating.
We don't know who has the ability to take their life, because it certainly goes against our grain to our self-preservation usually comes first, but some people have that ability to be able to take their life.
This is the battle, and I think that folks are on the other side of that battle. I think that sometimes, at least I feel, that we're losing the battle because that side of the battle is so vocal.
And my son asked me when he was at the University of Iowa, he called me and said, "Mom, I can't control my thoughts of suicide. Would you work directly with myself, my therapist, and my psychiatrist?" And that was by far one of the most beautiful times of my life and one of the most difficult times of my life.
Teenagers don't like their parents in their business, but to be more aware of them and even just asking how their day went, and they'll probably say, "Oh, fine," but to try to bring up their conversations with them, to watch affects, to watch changes in friends, in groups of friends, to make sure their grades are not dropping, to just make sure that things are going at an even keel.
Or death. And so when it comes to life or death, it's really important that we put our own discomfort, not that we put it aside, but that we kind of say to it, "I'll get back to you in a minute," and take care of it afterwards, but that we're able to be there and be what our loved one needs us to be before we are what we feel comfortable being.
And what we need to ask questions about or get support for is whatever the pain is, what's causing you so much pain that you feel like death is the only answer to stopping the pain. They may have tried lots of other things to make whatever this perceived mental heartache, whatever physical pain, go away, and they're feeling hopeless and that nothing's working.
It's okay to feel this way. People feel so much guilt over feeling suicidal. And so helping to take some of that guilt away through validating, it must be really scary to feel that way, or you must be in a lot of pain to be, you know, thinking about suicide or to be feeling this way. And that can help to make them feel not as alone. It can help to maybe reframe it a little bit, and let them know that it's okay to be feeling this way. Not that we're gonna do something about it, but that you aren't wrong or bad for having the feelings and the thoughts that you're having.
Let them know, to whatever degree we can, that this is not so unusual. They probably have had friends who've been there. Sometimes if we can, you know, sort of help with that, like you probably know, you know, I've talked to a friend who's thought about suicide, then it sort of normalizes it. Know that, you know, it's about creating safety and not about having somebody watch them, because a young person does not want another adult, you know, hawkishly watching them, or that all the teachers think they're a freak because they've been hospitalized.
Really is focused on getting the information into people's hands.
Mm-hmm.
We're not treating people, you know, we're not trying to be a suicide crisis hotline. Those resources already exist.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do is bring the topic forward, bring it out of the darkness.
Mm-hmm.